And welcome everybody to our October webinar from CSols, and this one is entitled Paperless and Beyond, Jumpstarting Your ELN. I always find that difficult to say. I'll get better towards the end of the webinar, I hope. ELN implementation. So first, a little bit about me. I've been in informatics systems, both within the lab and within manufacturing for more than 25 years. During that time frame, I have worked within the lab, LIMS, ELN, CDS, SDMS systems, and just about any type of system that you can think of within the lab, both within R&D and QC. And within manufacturing, I've worked with MES systems, manufacturing execution systems, EBR systems, electronic batch record systems, and of course, ERP systems. Worked in a variety of industries as well, from pharma, biotech, heavily regulated industries, to the less heavily regulated industries within chemical and petrochemical. So I've got a pretty extensive knowledge of lab and lab informatics, laboratory processes and workflows, and that is combined with pretty extensive knowledge of IT. And what I want to be able to do today is, just from my experience, give everybody that's on the webinar some hints and perhaps tips on how you can move beyond paperless with ELN and how you can jumpstart your ELN implementation. So how are we going to do that? Well, here's the agenda, and the premise of this webinar is that you've already selected your ELN. And as you're probably aware, there's many ways of selecting your ELN. So we're going to try and describe those different ways and where it positions you for implementation purposes based upon how your selection has been made. We're then going to go through implementation planning. And the implementation planning here is really all about, you've selected an ELN. How are you going to get the greatest value from it? You're investing in it. It is important that you plan to utilize it to its utmost in order to get a return on your investment. And then we're going to jump into, okay, we've talked about the product. Now, what about the services that you are paying for, that you're getting from your vendor? And we're going to talk about mechanisms to get the best that you can, make them the most productive and efficient when they join your project team. Finally, we'll summarize, and then we'll go into a Q&A session where you can answer you can ask the questions, and hopefully I can answer them. So let's get going. So as I've said, the premise is you've selected your ELN. And the question is, now what? Well, before we get into the now what, let's talk about different mechanisms that you may have used to select your ELN. So one of the ones that we advocate for and we support our clients in performing is a formal selection process, where you go through, map out workflows, you develop requirement specifications, and you do a formal evaluation of ELN vendors. Another way that you may have selected your ELN vendor is maybe corporate IT, or somewhere in the corporate realm has made a decision, and probably a sound decision from where they sit, to standardize across the organization on a specific ELN. So the selection has been made, but you, and when I say you, the people in your lab and your immediate organization, may not have had much input into the selection. And then there's a sort of a hybrid type of selection process, where maybe within your lab you have involved users and you've had 2 or 3 companies come in. Maybe you use some of their products already within your organization. They've given demos, and based upon user feedback, you've selected a vendor. So if that's where you are, you will notice from those three different categories I mentioned, different involvements of users. The final end users are subject matter experts associated with your ELN implementation. And based upon different start points, you're going to have to address different techniques or tactics to get them involved early on. So what is next? Implementation is next. And there are a variety of things that you need to be able to think about. And we will go through some of those in detail. We will gloss over some of the ones which are either less important or that we have discussed in previous webinars. So if you have gone through a formal vendor selection process, then most likely you will have created an ELN vision. So what is the vision? The vision is where you want to be when you have finished your implementation activities. And when I say implementation activities, this doesn't necessarily mean it is a single project. It is maybe multiple projects. It may be multiple phases within a project. The whole concept here is that you have mapped out where you want to get to with your ELN implementation. You've mapped out how you want to fully utilize the capabilities of the ELN that you've selected. Also, typically, if you've gone through a formal selection process, you'll have requirements. And finally, you will have a roadmap. And a roadmap is merely the mechanism, the steps that you need to take from where you are now to where you want to be in the future, the vision. Each of the steps such that you can gradually grow into your new ELN. So first of all, even though you've selected an ELN, you've probably selected one of two types. First type is discipline specific. So you have maybe heavy duty science going on where you need very, very specific capabilities within your ELN. You may, and hence the ELN you've selected is just going to be within a small group of your overall organization. And this may be based upon, for example, small versus large molecule, right? Maybe your focus is on small molecule, not large, and so you've chosen an ELN that has those capabilities, but possibly not any or many capabilities in large molecule research and development. So there's reasons why you would select either a single discipline specific ELN or a multidiscipline ELN. And as you can imagine, if you have selected a multidiscipline ELN, there are probably some features that do exist in the single discipline ELN that don't exist in the multidiscipline ELN. And I read it somewhere, so this is not mine, but it was equating these two different types of ELN to a smartphone. Smartphone is definitely multidiscipline. You can send emails, you can send text messages, you can even call people on your smartphone, and you can browse the internet. You can buy things on websites.